Welcome to Swallow Web Application SWAPP. In this latest video, we'll be discussing the new function that is added to our SWAPP menu point, which is called as Resource Terminal. As you all know, there are two types of resources, service resources and individual resources. And this resource terminal works only for the service type resources. So before moving on to the details of this function, we need to have certain prerequisite settings to be done in Swallow desktop application. So first let's do that. Log into Swallow desktop application. There, the first step is to identify the resource which shall be used for resource terminal purpose. For that, let's go to MPC. There, production information, resource grouping. The list that you see on the left side are the complete list of resources, and the one marked in bold are not yet grouped under any groups. The right side shows those resources that are moved to some production group. Here we have two types, green button and yellow button, and only this green button resources can be used for resource terminal. It is grouped under a group where we have various resources. The group ID here is 484 and its description. Then we have resources with resource ID followed by the resource description. So identifying the resource is the first step. So here we have three resources. Then the second step is creating a user with the same ID equivalent to the resource ID and giving swap permission. So let's create a user. Here we already have a user with the resource ID 7010 who has permission to swap, and the start menu for that particular user is being given as the resource terminal. So whenever he log into swap, directly he will be taken to this menu point. We also need to give him access to swap. Swap access. Therefore, the user 7010, we have resource terminal access being given. So this is the second prerequisite. Now comes the third prerequisite. For that, go to MBC, production information, basic data, there, PI parameters. So as already mentioned, there will be different operators, and whenever a particular operator is moved out of a resource, automatically he gets landed up here. So this is the indirect default activity which we have to choose. We have to choose any value from this drop list. So this is a mandatory step. So these are the three prerequisites required for the swap resource terminal function to be working. Now let's move on to swap function. Let's log in with the user ID equivalent to resource ID. If you're logging in for the first time, then you may require to specify the password confirmation, or else you can just log in. So this is our swap page for resource terminal where we have three tabs: overview tab, materials, and measure points. The materials and measure point tabs are not tied up with the resource but tied up with the activity. Let's see the details of this overview tab. Here we have a header section with the resource number and description, followed by under which group it comes in, that is a group ID and group description. Then towards the right, we have the operators list. All operators assigned to the resource or the group will be listed here. Then in the header, we have the type of activity. There are three types of activity: direct, indirect, or division activity. By default, when you comes in, if the ongoing activity is a direct activity, then that ongoing activity will be shown in asterisks. And by default, if it is a direct activity which is ongoing, it will be automatically selected. That's why this particular first line is highlighted. If it was some other type of activity, then this selection won't be there by default and we have to manually select by clicking. So the activity number followed by the description. Then we have the status. There are three types of status: production, interrupted and stopped. And only for the interrupted type of status, we will be having a text here which has the interrupt code and description marked in red color. Then we have the table. The table lists the activities that are top 5 or 6 that are scheduled for this resource. There will be lot of activities and only the top 5 or 6 on the basis of the priority will be listed in SWAPP. The user can click on any serial key to select an activity. You can click on any, and based on your selection, the bottom side shows an item image if one is set up in desktop application. Here, for the first entry, we have an image, but for the second, we don't have. That's why we don't see any images in this bottom section. Then inside this table, we have a unique serial key for each manufacturing operation. Then the manufacturing number, operation number, item description, lot number, operation number for the manufacturing activity. Then the start and finish date for this particular activity, the order quantity in manufacturing operation, the remaining quantity. Once you start producing, whatever be the remaining quantity, it will be getting shown here. And this page will be getting automatically refreshed once in every minute. So whatever be the update that happens in backend will be getting reflected here. Then we have the remaining resource time, then remaining operator time, then the operation description. So these are the details that we have in this overview tab. Now let's move on to the second tab, that is materials. So based on your selection, its details will be loaded here. That is, let's select a serial key, and the material tab displays the reserved material for the selected activity. Here we have the item number, description, and the reserved quantity and required date. The required date is the date by which you need to procure the particle for the production of the item. Then we have the measure points tab. Currently highlighted activities details will be shown here, and the measurement that is the measure point are the measurements that you do periodically to ensure that the items are produced correctly. That is, it is a type of quality check. The header section shows the details of the drawing. If there were any drawing associated with the manufacturing operation, then that would have been displayed here. The first line shows the details of the drawing. Then we have type. There are two types, that is selection and all. On the basis of the type that you mentioned here, the quality check will be done. If the type was all, then for all the manufactured items for this manufacturing operation will undergo this quality check. If it was selection, then on the basis of the value that you mentioned for this quantity for startup control and frequency and quantity, the quality check or the measure point will be happening. If the type was all, then the second line, this whole line would not have been present because it doesn't have any relevance in case of all, because for every goods produced, we'll be doing the quality check. The value that you mentioned for this quantity for startup control indicates that whatever be the value mentioned here, for the first, that number of goods that are produced, we will be doing the quality check. And after that, on the basis of the frequency value that you specify, out of that, whatever be the quantity you specify in this place, only those number of goods will be inspected. If the frequency is 20 and the quantity was 2, then for every 20 goods that is produced, 2 will be inspected. That's what the meaning of this whole line. If this quantity startup control value was 10, then it means the first 10 will be definitely undergone quality check. Then we have control text. which is a general instruction for the measure point of for the particular activity. Then we have the measure point list, where we have the measure point code or ID, then the nominal value, then attribute, the tolerance maximum and minimum level. Then if you want to specify specific instruction for every measure point, then it can be given here. Then the fixer number. Then apart from the frequency and quantity that you mentioned on top, which is generic, if you want to specify for each measurement code or measure point code, then that can be mentioned in each row individually. So this is the details of the measure point. And as already mentioned, if there was a drawing associated with this particular selected activity, then that would have been displayed here. Adding a drawing or the item image can be set up from the desktop application, and it will be done on the basis of the corresponding company default language. The measure point drawing are always associated with the manufacturing operation, and both this drawing and item image are done from desktop application. So this is all about a measure point. If we take this particular activity, it has an item image. If you go to the measure point tab, there we have the drawing also available. So this is how we see the different drawings also in resource terminal window. Hope this function is very much clear to you all. Thank you for watching.